welcome to Beyond the Spreadsheet, a proudly interesting chartered accountant podcast brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Namibia, for short, ICAN. My name is Rodilio Lewis, and I'll be your host for this exciting four-part series where we'll be talking to some of the top accountants in the country to find out what exactly makes a chartered accountant. Now, today we've got an exciting guest for our very first episode, and you know, it's good to do an introduction, so let's jump right on into it. Beyond the Spreadsheet is a new podcast brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Namibia. It aims to move beyond the spreadsheet and delve into the minds of Namibia's most prolific chartered accountants, offering a glimpse into the finance and the accounting professions from their insights to their triumphs. Our first guest has over 25 years of experience in financial services. He's the Deputy Executive Director in the Department of Economic Policy, including tax policy, a role he's held since March of 2023. With a strong background in economic policy and a deep understanding of tax frameworks, he's been instrumental in shaping strategic policies that impact the national economy. His impressive resume has also seen him as the Executive Director of F&B Namibia from 2016 all the way until 2023, and Chief Financial Officer from 2012 to 2023, to just name a few. And in his spare time, when he's not crunching numbers, he's crunching in the air by making sure he's a private pilot. Now I'm talking about nobody else but Oscar Capelao. Welcome, Oscar. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making some time from crunching numbers to flying planes to sit down and talk to us a little bit about what accounting is really all about.
My pleasure.
Now, Oscar, to just jump on into it, for any of our guests that are, of course, listening right now and thinking to themselves, okay, Rodilio, who is Oscar? How did he come on the scene? What is it that makes him who he is? Could you give us a little bit of an understanding of who you are?
Yes, let me take a stab at it. At my age, it's been a while. Yes, I'm from Rundu. I was born in Rundu. That's where I grew up. Went to primary school, and then for high school, I came into Windhoek. But otherwise, yes, I'm from Rundu. My mom is still there. That's what I call hometown.
Stunning.
Yes.
And while being in your hometown, you somewhere along the lines found a love for accounting. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
You've probably heard of the quote by Bruce Lee, be like water.
That's it.
So early on in life, in my grade 8 year, I mean, it was one of those things. For accounting, it was a gift. Came easy. Science, I had to work harder for the same kind of marks. So it was a matter of like, push more hours this way or do the easy route that way. So that's how accounting came into my life. I mean, it's one of those things, be like water. Easier path.
I love that a lot. That's super nice. And of course, for some of our people out there that are like wondering, okay, you guys are now talking about accounting, you're not talking about water, you're talking about Rundu, but what exactly is accounting? Like when we look at it, we have that grade 8 understanding, and I also remember being in high school and saying, this is my subject. This one, I like this one. Up until grade 10, and I was like, okay, clearly the numbers and I are not balancing. The balance sheets are not together. I'm always the last one in class, but obviously, there's a bigger understanding of what accounting becomes when you leave school. So for all of our people that are wondering, what is accounting? What is a chartered accountant? What are all of these terms? What does it mean?
The field in itself is very broad. Obviously, when we start off in school, we speak of accounting. But as you dive deeper into the field, there are a couple of branches in accounting. I mean, one, of course, is financial accounting, and then you have management accounting, stuff that you can always specialize in. So there's not a single answer that says what exactly is accounting. But if you had to ask me, Oscar, what's a chartered accountant? That's a black belt in accounting.
That's the black belt one.
That's the black belt one. So in accounting, what we're trying to do is to measure success. Are you winning or losing in economic terms? And that's where accounting comes in, is to say as to over a period, are you headed in the right direction? Are you heading where you thought you'd be? Are you making progress? So it's really as to, in terms of accounting or economics, that's how we measure success and knowing what you're doing from a financial return perspective. Because obviously on earth, we measure success in money terms sometimes, not all the times, but it's a big component of how we measure success, both individually and obviously at the national level. I mean, when we speak of global trade, accounting matters even at that level. And like I said, chartered accountant is the black belt in accounting.
I like that. I like that.
Yes.
I like the movement of it all. And of
Still Bruce Lee.
Still Bruce Lee, I say. And of course, when you look at that, you also understand that it is multifaceted, the understanding around what a chartered accountant is and also where you can operate in. Because there's, of course, public sector and then there's the private sector. And you've operated in both.
Absolutely.
And obviously, there is some hurdles that you have to go through. There is some change that comes in because working in the private sector is very different from working in the public sector. But to put it into context, what would you say is the biggest differences between the private sector and the public sector for the black belts in the accounting world?
Let me step back a bit because I get that question often as to why did I move? I got the CFO role in my previous job early in life. So I did it for, over 10 years. I mean, a decade later, I was asking myself as to what's next for Oscar? What's the next challenge? And then having served my 10 years, I was looking broad as to how can I make a positive impact to greater Namibia versus where I was. And given where the country is in terms of the FDI we're speaking of from green industrialization with the hydrogen conversation, the oil and gas discoveries. So definitely we are at a juncture in our economy that we need more minds. The other way I think of it is I love football. I've never played football, but I love football. So if you think of a soccer team, you need a great formation. You need your forwards, you need your midfielders, you need your defensive line, and you need your goalkeepers. So as chartered accountants, if we look at the Namibian economy, okay, there's the private sector, there's the public sector. Now, government makes up, close to 40% of our economy. So if we only choose to play in 60% of the game, as a nation, we can't win.
Yes.
Again, back to my soccer example. I mean, you cannot have a team that doesn't have forwards or midfielders or goalkeeper. I mean, you choose your favorite position, but I'm just saying as to, for the Namibian team to win, you need all positions filled with your best skills. And that's really where I'm looking at from this worldview that I'm saying as to, given where Namibia is going from a global play, global trade, we definitely need to be around the table as we speak to all these investors who are coming on to our shows with their best minds. We need also our best minds on the table to have these conversations with all these business cases that are coming up. So in terms of the challenges, things smoother, but there's a price to democracy. So there's more consultation that takes place at the public sector level, but I remind my colleagues in the profession, there's this article that Paul Krugman, a great economist, wrote that he says, a country is not a company.
Beautiful.
It's slightly more complex. Because sometimes when we're sitting outside, because we see success in the private sector, but the private sector in entities, it's slightly a more closed loop that it's easier to get things done, but the complexity of the government makes it slightly slow moving. But at the same time, the impact you have
is much larger.
It's much larger.
And you'd much rather have that impact than have then just stay in the small
Absolutely.
game. I like that.
Because if you look at, where do you see a bigger balance sheet and income statement in Namibia? Our national budget just early in the year was 100 billion. Now, 100 billion of income statement, surely we need more CAs around the table.
We need more black belts, everyone.
We need more black belts, yes.
No, I love that. And we need more of them to, of course, work in the public sector. And I think, like you're saying, if we want to make sure that the Namibian house wins, at the end of the day, all the players need to be on the field. We need everyone, whether you're operating in the private sector, but we need those public sector people to be there. We need our front runners. I like that.
Absolutely, because government is too a big player in the economy not to have all players in the team.
Now, for the young ones out there, or even for anyone out there that's sitting now and thinking, but I want to stay in private, because when I'm in private, I'm in charge. I'm the one, I'm running the shots. what is that advice you'd give them? Because what you just said, I'm like, if you didn't get it now and put it on a T-shirt, you're losing some very nice quotes here from Oscar. Then you need to like really just figure out a piece of advice that you would give to someone and say like, if you wanted to stay in the public sector or if you wanted to stay in the private sector, you can do that, but think about this to get you to the public sector. What would that advice, what would that conversation look like?
Definitely. I mean, if you look at the discipline in the private sector runs at a different level. Private sector is a varsity in itself on top of the varsity one gets. If you look at what's this, resources allocation, efficiencies, thinking how you run capital, those are great lessons that you get in the private sector, because when you're closer to the owner of capital, the discipline to think about capital and capital allocation is different. And the private sector absolutely does well in terms of training people, I mean, upskilling, relations and so on is there. But the worldview I'm trying to share is saying, imagine a public sector where some of this thinking was also applied. I mean, if we look at business cases, because like I said, as to where we are now with the hydrogen conversation, oil and gas, even, I mean, now tourism picking up. Now, the guys we're speaking to are bringing their best lawyers, their best engineers.
The 18.
The 18, the black belts are coming.
Yes.
That's why we need black belts on this side of the table to get the best maximum share of the cake for Namibia. So that's why you cannot sit only in the private sector and think we've got it covered. Like I said, you would only be playing in 60%
of
the field. There's that other half that also needs the best of minds. And that's really where I'm coming in, is to say, as to when it comes to global trade, each team is negotiating from its best point. I mean, everyone wants to win, and therefore we must make sure that we are fielding full formation, full field, and not only playing in one half and expect to win.
The result.
So if we want to speak prosperity as chartered accountants and transformation and pushing Namibia forward in a global play, we need to make sure that we are participating on both sides of the economy, in the public sector and the private sector. That will get us to winning. Because only playing on the one side, it's tough to score if you're only in the defensive side. Then the other guys are coming to attack.
No, I like that. And it's really, it takes me to that African proverb that basically says, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together.
Absolutely.
And it really is a together team situation here. We need all of our black belts together. We need all of them to do their kata. They need to be ready. And I like that. I like that. And you wouldn't say necessarily that a profession like being a chartered accountant would actually require such teamwork or such a togetherness. Because when you look at accountants, I think a lot of us have this idea that if you're an accountant, you're sitting in a cubicle, long hours, typing away at a computer, stressed out, sunglasses or something, and you're just there drinking a lot of coffee. Again, nice socks. It's an accountant.
It's a reminder. Time for that cup.
So it's so interesting for me to see like how we can also now see this evolution of what chartered accountants look like. And if you look at when you started back in the day and when you look at where the profession has progressed to where it is now, do you see more evolution coming for the profession? Do you see Namibian chartered accountants evolving even more? Is there a prospectus for more, basically?
Change is definitely a constant in our field. We're always learning from mistakes. As the world has gone through a couple of financial crises, accountants need to go back to the drawing board. International rules are rewritten, what we refer to as IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards. And that's the thing. I mean, it's international financial reporting standards. So the rules for accounting are applied globally. Okay, the Americans have their own thing, but the rest of the world, we follow the same code. So what you are learning and what you'll be applying, it applies global. It's global rules. Now, again, as the global economy changes, the rules are changed, there's constant change. So there's not a thing as to you graduated
and now you're
in 1990 or 2000 and you're done. there's constant need to remain fresh in terms of what's happening. So that's the thing as to, if you don't keep up, you'll soon be outdated and left behind. I mean, look at hydrogen. It's relatively new. If you look at, like I said, oil and gas, it's new this side of the world. But again, others have been there. So there is some learning curve for us to catch up. But that's the thing. I mean, if we look at industrialization, we still don't have big manufacturing establishments in Namibia. So there's also that need to still learn that. And I mean, and the rules again of accounting, like I said, definition of winning. It's he who understands the rules better. When you speak of pricing, when you go into a shop, there's a price for an item on the shelf. Now, there are a couple of accountants behind the scenes who go to that price, and economists, of course. Hear me right, I'm not just campaigning for accountants here. I speak for financial services. I speak for financial literacy. It's a matter of as to, yes, there's supply and demand that determines prices, but we need to have an appreciation for costing. What did it cost to manufacture? How can we manufacture for better value? How do we take out inefficiencies? And those are words that you'll hear from accountants. That's why we need to be around the table. Coming back to the public sector, if you look at the mega project government does, that's again where we need, I mean, if you think of a power station, you'd want a couple of black belts there to make sure that it's built at the right price, value for money for the taxpayers. Because at the end of the day, where does revenue from the state come from? Taxes. Therefore, once we've collected taxes, it must be deployed as efficiently as possible in the right projects. And that's also where you need the black belt minds that come from an accounting perspective.
I love that. It's really, it takes me back to your quote now from Bruce Lee, like
Bruce Lee.
be like water.
Be like water.
If you look at it, you need to really be able to like fit into any situation. And if you look at how, on a global scale, as we're talking, it's changing. The global scale is changing. Like the stage is changing. The arena is constantly evolving. And for us to now also catch up the way we are, because we really are in the digital era and everything is speeding up. The revolution is here. And to also just see how everything has become so digitized, and to see how everyone is like jumping onto the green hydrogens, jumping onto the oil, and it's quite exciting. It's quite interesting. But I know that you don't just sit down and do accounting every day. You don't just sit there and crunch numbers and figure out about supply and demand, because I haven't heard about supply and demand since economics class in grade 9. So I was like, wow, my teacher would be so proud. Miss Martin would sit down and be like, yes, Rodilio, you must remember how to do it. But when you're not sitting down and figuring out how the next steps for the country should look like when it comes to budgeting and financing, you also have fun. Because we need to remember that accountants aren't just serious all the time. They also do have their unwinding times. And you took a small sabbatical at one point from all of it. And you jumped into flying. You decided to become a private pilot. Can you tell me about just what that was like, and how stepping out of this world and stepping back into it afterwards felt like?
The CFO role is taxing. And I would even say sometimes not so much appreciated. Until you've been in the arena, you won't fully appreciate the pressure that it takes and the toll it takes on one. So yes, I needed a mid-term career break at the point, and I do extreme stuff. Okay, so Kilimanjaro the one year, Everest the next, and then I was like, okay, the borders were closed. I couldn't go to any mountain. I was like, okay, let me go to flight school.
Let me go to the sky.
I always wanted to do it, so I made some time for flight school. But it's again, I mean, what is at the age of 40, like, let me learn something completely new, where I got to sit at the back of the class, a fresh student again. But it's following passion. But again, I could see progress like on a weekly basis. So it was a press of reset for myself, sitting at the back of the class, seeing new students, guys who just finished school, looking forward to life, and like, oh, and you're like, oh, you have no idea what is coming. But what do I do it for? That's my golf. While others are on the golf field on a Saturday, I'm up in the sky. That's how I calm
Decompress
down,
from it all.
decompress and breathe.
That's how you balance your balance sheet.
That's how I balance my balance sheet. The oxygen is fresher up there.
No, that's amazing. And I think it's so healthy to have that kind of a balance
Yes.
in your life. You need to, of course, like you're also saying, the private and the public sector.
Yes.
We need that balance. There needs to
Yes.
be that constant left and right
Yes.
needs to be in coherence. So it's healthy to have that and
'Cause-
still be working.
Because to tap into your best thoughts and ideas, you need it. Yes, we function. I thrive under pressure. I know a lot of people thrive under pressure, but some of my best ideas were in the shower, were in the sky, where I was away from my screen.
Yes.
And that's why I would say it's like there are those moments that you need to be away from the screen. So that's why I'm not a fan of people who do all-nighters.
Yeah.
Yes, there are days. I mean, I can also function
We can-
a couple of hours that we can push, but there's that constant reminder that I say, I need to go for a walk.
Yes.
Because I know
That bit of oxygen
that bit of oxygen, man, the ideas
It
flow.
rushes in,
And
yes.
then when I get back to my desk, man, Bruce Lee Kung
That's-
Fu black belt comes through again. So that's,
No.
one needs to have that fair balance.
You need to have that faith.
Yes.
It's so necessary.
Yes.
Now, I am supposed to have had a last question for you now. I was supposed to. But we basically just answered that last one because I'm like, if I had to leave anyone with like a piece of advice, that's the advice.
That's
I
the
feel
advice,
like
yes.
whether it's in the accounting field, whether it's in normal life, whether you're a housewife, doesn't matter what you're doing, that balance is so important. That balance from you as a person being in the public space, being in the private space, that all needs to have a balance. So be like Bruce Lee, be like water, get your black belt, and
yes.
make sure that you flow.
One more thing. I read a lot. Okay. Couple of authors I enjoy, Jim Collins, Simon Sinek, what's the other one? Adam Grant. Adam Grant is my current favorite. And they write on strategy, leadership, so not accounting. But again, that brings the angle of sustainability, empathy, that kind of stuff. Because I mean, the hard part of accounting, it's not the debits and credits, it's people. Because at the core of everything that we do, there are people.
Yes.
When we say the economy is growing, is to grow people,
Nice.
prosperity of people. That's really as to, yes, people will sometimes look at it like, oh, these guys are in the hard sciences. But at the core of what we do is bettering people's life. And like I said, from a public sector perspective, sure, the impact we can have on the 3 million inhabitants of Namibia speaks for itself. And I mean, in terms of a quote, I like the CEO of Microsoft in his book, Hit Refresh, where he says, keep learning. Because if you stop learning, you stop doing useful stuff. So please read more that you can do useful stuff.
That's it. I like that. Well, if we want to read up more on what you do, where do we go? Oscar, if we want to stay in this mindset, because I think it's so important to also have people within the Namibian context that we can look to as leaders, as people that actually are doing the work, that are actually taking the breaks and being honest about taking those breaks and showing you what it looks like when you make those big jumps from the private sector to the public sector, what it looks like to still take risks, because I think a lot of times we don't take risks.
Yes.
So for any young people out there, for any one of our people that are listening right now, watching the podcast, how do we stay connected to you? Where do we go? How do we read up more? How do we read your book that hopefully will come out soon, guys? Watch out. Oscar is, hey,
Working on it. Working on it. We are very reachable. As a civil servant, doors are open. Our hands are few, so we definitely need more input from everyone. I mean, if you come up with a great idea, because when we're doing economic policy, tax policy, research for the budget, and it's a continuous process. So we don't have stop-start dates. We are always thinking. We are always creating. Yes, there are phases that you'll see my boss in Parliament presenting the midterm budget, and then early in the year, February, he presents the full budget, but it's a constant flow. And therefore, I would say if you come up with something, because what keeps me awake, it's the tax competitiveness that we need to enhance to grow our economy. So that's a constant. And that's what I say, it's like, please keep the ideas going. Because 360 degrees is a bit wide. So while we are looking north, I need somebody to help me as to what's happening in the south, what's happening in the east, what's happening in the west, to give us that full view of the field.
Full team.
Exactly.
It's the full team of black belt players. We just need it.
Exactly. Yes, we welcome all ideas. It goes through prioritizing, but again, it's a matter of there are only so many hands, and like I said, in a democracy, we consult more. And given that, that's what I'm saying, our doors are open, we welcome ideas, we do debate these things, but what we need is a winning Namibian team, which we need full formation, all fields covered.
Stunning. I love it. Thank you so much, Oscar. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for sharing with us, and just thank you for making accounting sound interesting to me again, because I was like, it's going to be a long day, but I'm like, this is like, it's interesting because you've also, to a degree, humanized it again. And I think sometimes we forget that there's that human aspect to it. So from my side, thank you so much for popping on for the first episode of Beyond the Spreadsheet. Very happy. And I'm very happy we could get beyond your spreadsheets today. Panovietons, you're flying, you're out here reading very nice books, and you've got great quotes. So thank you very much, Oscar, for popping in. And I hope to chat to you again soon.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
That's, of course, our first episode. Be sure to stick around as we've got more coming your way. But for now, of course, thank you so much. And that's Beyond the Spreadsheet.